Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari 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 Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jam Shivana Sabaraga Shri Sivanka Sesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai Acharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Swami Acharya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hare Krishna. Please pray for me, please bless me. Feeling a little nervous today for various reasons. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 13. Ashtame Devyam tu Nabhe Jata Urukrama Darshan Vatmadhiranam Sarvashama Namaskrutam. Ashtame Devyam tu
Ashtame Devyam tu
Nabhe Jata Urukrama
Nabhe Jata Urukrama
Darshayan Vatmadhiranam
Darshayan Vatmadhiranam
Sarvashama Namaskrutam.
Sarvashrama Namaskritam.
Ashtame Devyam tu
Ashtame Devyam tu
Nabhe Jata Urukrama
Nabhe Jata Urukrama
Darshayan Vatmadhiranam
Darshayan Vatmadhiranam
Sarvashama Namaskrutam.
Sarvashrama Namaskritam.
अष्टमे मेरु देव्यं तु
Ashtame Devyam tu
नाभिर्जात उरुक्रमा
Nabhe Jata Urukrama
दर्शयान्वत्मधीराणां
Darshayan Vatmadhiranam
सर्वाश्रमा नमस्कृतं
Sarvashrama Namaskritam.
अष्टमे मेरु देव्यां तु
Ashtame Devyam tu
जात उरुक्रमा
Nabhe Jata Urukrama
वर्त्मधीराणां
Darshayan Vatmadhiranam
सर्वाश्रमनमस्कृतं
Sarvashrama Namaskritam.
अष्टमे मेरु देव्यं तु
Ashtame Devyam tu
नाभे जात उरुक्रमा
Nabhe Jata Urukrama
दर्शयन् वत्मधीराणां
Darshayan Vatmadhiranam
सर्वाश्रमा नमस्कृतं
Sarvashrama Namaskritam.
अष्टमे मेरु देव्यं तु
Ashtame Devyam tu
नाभे जात उरुक्रमा
Nabhe Jata Urukrama
दर्शयन् वत्मधीराणां
Darshayan Vatmadhiranam
सर्वाश्रम नमस्कृतं
Sarvashrama Namaskritam. Ashtame Meru Devyam tu
Ashtame Devyam tu
Nabhe Jata Urukrama
Nabhe Jata Urukrama
Darshayan Vatmadhiranam
Darshayan Vatmadhiranam
Sarvashrama Namaskritam
Sarvashrama Namaskritam. Ashtame, the eighth of the incarnations. Meru Devyam tu.
मेरु देव्यां तु
In the womb of Meru Devi, the wife of Nabi, King Nabi,
King Nabhe
Jata,
Jata
took birth,
Urukrama
Urukrama, the all-powerful Lord,
the all-powerful Lord
Darshayan,
Darshayan
by showing Vartha,
Vatma
the way,
the way
Dhirana,
Dhirana
of the perfect beings,
of the perfect beings
Sarva,
Sarva
all, Ashrama,
Ashrama
orders of life,
orders of life
Namaskritam,
Namaskritam
on her guide.
on her life.
Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The eighth incarnation was King Rishabha, son of King Nabi, and his wife Meru Devi. In this incarnation, the Lord showed the path of perfection which is followed by those who fully control their senses and who are honored by all orders of life. Prabhupada's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. ki jai. The society of human beings is naturally divided into 8 by orders of statuses of life, the 4 divisions of occupation and 4 divisions of cultural advancement. The intelligent class, the administrative class, the productive class, and the laborer class are the 4 divisions of occupation. And the student life, the householder's life, retired life, and renounced life are the 4 statuses of cultural advancement towards the path of spiritual realization. Out of these, the renounced order of life, or the order of sannyasa, is considered the highest of all, and the sannyasi is constitutionally the spiritual master for all the orders and divisions. In the sannyasa order also, there are 4 stages of upliftment toward perfection. These stages are called Kutichaka, Bahudaka, Parijagacharya, and Paramahamsa. The Paramahamsa stage of life is the highest stage of perfection. This order of life is respected by all others. Maharaj Rishabha, the son of King Navi and Nehru Devi, was an incarnation of the Lord, and he instructed his sons to follow the path of perfection by tapasya, which sanctifies one's existence and enables one to attain the state of spiritual happiness, which is eternal and ever increasing. Every living being is searching after happiness, but no one knows where eternal and unlimited happiness is obtainable. Foolish men seek after material sense pleasure as a substitute for real happiness, but such foolish men forget that temporary so-called happiness derived from sense pleasures is also enjoyed by the dogs and hogs. No animal, bird or beast is bereft of this sense pleasure. In every species of life, including the human form of life, such happiness is immensely obtainable. The human form of life, however, is not meant for such cheap happiness. The human life is meant for attaining eternal and unlimited happiness by spiritual realization. This spiritual realization is obtained by tapasya, or undergoing voluntarily the path of penance and abstinence from material pleasure. Those who have been trained for abstinence in material pleasures are called dhira, or men undisturbed by the senses. Only these dhiras can accept the orders of sannyasa, and they can gradually rise to the status of the Paramahamsa, which is adored by all members of society. King Rishabha propagated this mission, and at the last stage he became completely aloof from the material bodily needs, which is a rare stage, not to be imitated by foolish men, but to be worshipped by all. Om Jnanatimandasya Gnanashalakhya Chakshunmilitam Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swaram Rupa Kadayam Dhanati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Tapadakam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sarvajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Tam Sajivam Sarvaitam Sarvatam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Nana Sudho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurami Radhe Vindameshwari Rishabhana Sute Devi Pranamami Devi Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you for coming here on Saturday morning. Personally, I've had difficulties, especially after a long week. So I can totally appreciate you being here on a Saturday morning, especially early in the morning, when 99.9999% of the people are still in bed. right now. So, this is a unique opportunity for us, as well as a very unique privilege for me to be here. So thank you. I'd like to get your blessings, your prayers as senior Vaishnavas to help me through this next 45 minutes, and you'll have to bear with me. So this, again, is in the continuation of all the incarnations of the Lord. And as we've been hearing week after week after week, and Prabhu, you did the last week, it was very, very nice. Thank you for that. It just goes to show how the Lord's incarnations are so inconceivable. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing, right? I mean, you think about it, His incarnation as the boar, as a fish, as a tortoise. I mean, just going through all of His incarnations, and there's a purpose for each and every one of those incarnations. And it's mind-boggling to even think that the Lord can appear in so many different ways, because we are thinking through our material frame of mind. It's very difficult for us to try and understand or even comprehend. But when you think about it and you actually put your faith in it, it makes a huge difference. It's no longer just a fable or some mythology, as most Westerners would call it, or even folks in India would call it. Right? But when you put your faith in it, it makes all that difference. And when it is coming from our acharyas, from our disciplic succession, it just gives you that entire boost in terms of trying, at least being able to grapple with the concept, if not fully understanding, but at least grappling with the concept that the Lord can actually manifest Himself in so many different ways and forms. Looking at all His avatars, His Purusha avatars, His Leela avatars, His Shaktivesha avatars, right? There's yoga avatars, there's so many different avatars, and it's infinite. And this just goes to show that the Lord is infinite and one in one sense. So the Achintya Veda Tattva is also very, very prominent. It's coming from there. We are all, that simultaneous oneness and difference is there in everything around us and everything within us and us by ourselves, right? We all have that one common connection, that Paramatma and that soul, the connection, it's coming from the Lord Himself. But at the same time, they're all very different. We all have our individualities. We all have our own propensities. We all have our free will. But at the same time, that oneness is still there. We're still connected to Krishna. So as we get through this, we'll be seeing more and more of that. But more importantly, talking about Lord Vishwadev, he was, out of his causeless mercy, he agreed to be born as the son of King Nabi and Merudevi. And the importance of Merudevi and King Nabi is also something that we should talk about, because they're none other than Devaki and Vasudev. They performed extreme austerities to get the boon from Lord Vishnu to be born, therefore Lord Vishnu to be born as their son in this world. I mean, how many of us can even think of something like that? It's just impossible, right? Infinity to the power of infinity. So therefore it is very, very important for us to understand that. And King Nabi himself was no ordinary personality. For being able to perform those austerities, severe austerities, and the sacrifices that were performed. And he was the son of a very prominent emperor of the world as well. Agnidhara, or Agnidhara, yes, was his father, who was the emperor of the world. King Nabi himself, spotless character. He was very highly regarded at his time. In fact, there was, at one point in time, there was a drought in one part of his kingdom. There was complete, there was no rains, it was extremely dry, there were no crops, people were suffering, cattle were dying. So there was just so much, the problems that people couldn't handle anymore. And Rishabdev was still a young boy at that point. He summoned the rains. He didn't go to Lord Indra, but he summoned the rains directly. And with those rains, everything came back to life. So even then, King Navi realized that his son was no ordinary child. And as Rishabdev grew up, he became the favorite of everybody in the kingdom. The administrators, the politicians, the ministers, but leave alone those, the common man, the citizens in the kingdom, they all loved him. He became so popular. So King Navi was observing all that, and being an elevated soul, he realized that there was no point hanging on to the throne and living, on that throne till his ripe old age. So very early on, he enthroned his son, Rishabdev, as the king, as the emperor of the world. And he left with his wife, with Meru Devi, to Badrikashrama to perform penances and to spend the remaining years of his life. So he was a very, very elevated soul. Rishabdev himself, he ruled the kingdom. He was married and then he had 100 sons. Now you would think, such an elevated personality, why would, didn't he exercise sense control? Because King Rishabdev, the Lord in that incarnation, is actually, what he instructed to his sons was all about sense control, about staying away from material sense gratification. But look at it, of the 100 sons that he had, the eldest was, can anyone tell me, you probably already know that. But before that, who was his eldest son? Bharata, who later became Bharata Maharaj. Yeah. And then the next 9 sons were Navayogendras. Navayogendras, because if you look at the Varnashrama, if you look at the Varnas or Ashramas, he was even higher. They are considered higher than the highest of the sannyasis. So they were very, very special. The next 80 of the sons were kings themselves, and they assisted King Bharata in ruling different parts of the kingdom. And then the other 10 were again very Uttama Adhikaris, very, very elevated individuals and souls. So if you look at this 100, it's not like just 100 children. They're very highly qualified. So it is out of pure compassion that these pure devotees bring these people, these souls to the world so that they can serve the Lord. And that's a very important thing for us to also observe and assimilate. That when we're bringing up our children, we also have a huge responsibility. It's not just about producing children and feeding them, but actually making sure that you're bringing up children that are Krishna conscious, so that they are, they have that solid foundation, and then they can actually start serving the Lord. So, talking about his teachings, right? So, the first 5 verses of Canto 5 gets into the details. Actually, it captures the essence of Lord Rishabdev's teachings in terms of how to, why it is so important and how it is possible to actually stay away from material sense gratification. Material sense gratification is all around us. Right? We're all engaging in our senses, and it is a commonplace thing. It doesn't take much for us to be able to engage our senses. And again, the biggest culprit is the mind. I'll get a little more into it in a few minutes. But when we engage our senses with the sense objects, then all the stuff that shouldn't be happening and shouldn't happen, happens. In other words, the drama happens. Right? The unwanted drama. And then it's a downward spiral from there. Unfortunately, we don't recognize that soon enough. Right? We see something once, and if we look away, that's okay. But if you see something twice or thrice, now the mind records it and starts capturing. Fortunately, this camera here is not able to think. It's capturing everything that we're saying. but it is not thinking. In our case, we think. That mind comes into play and immediately wants to capture that. And it'll hold it. It won't, you won't even recognize it. It's happening involuntarily and will show up at the worst possible time. When you're really tired at the end of the day. When you've had a long day with meetings with your boss where your boss is only screaming at you, or your co-workers are not cooperating with you, or your client is looking you in the face and saying, "What's wrong with you? Can't you get this right even now?" So you come back in the night and you're so tired. I'm just giving you an example. Everything seems to be, working the other way. You just want to let loose. You go, you put yourself on cruise control. That's it. And that's where the mind is going. The monkey mind is jumping from here to there to here to there and taking you to all the wrong places. That's the monkey mind. So what's the difference between the monkeys and us? And that's what Rishabdev is saying. The value of human life or human form of life is so, so important. You cannot say enough about it. Out of many millions of births, we're getting to this point where we can actually take this life and be conscious about everything that we do. Prabhupada says every beast, every animal, whether it's an aquatic or otherwise, everybody is engaging in sense gratification. It's not that they're not. It's a common thread, it's a fabric of life in this material world. But what differentiates us from them is we're able to think and do something about it. Unfortunately, when we, in the weakest possible moment, our mind is taking control of our senses and making it engage. So that's where your thinking, feeling, willing and acting happens. That chain pulls us down into the dirt. And that's where we have the hardest time. The more we think about it, the more we dwell on something bad or something we shouldn't, that's when we are actually getting ourselves into trouble. So that's a good point of recognition for us. One way to look at it is the moment the mind is going down the path of actually thinking about something we shouldn't be, you know that it's heading in the wrong direction. That is a good checkpoint. But it happens so smoothly and so quickly, and you're so tired, and you're like putting yourself in cruise control. You're saying, "Okay, let it go, a little bit. No, it's no problem. And then before you know it, it becomes a big problem. It's too late. So, and it could be anything, right? Whether it's drinking or otherwise. So, Dhirana is a very important term in this verse. Right? So the whole verse is very important, but more so the term Dhira is very, very important here for us to take away. At least that's something when I was reading this verse, this was standing out and staring at me in the face. Dhirana. So Dhira, one has to be Dhira. Dhira in this context means undisturbed. Undisturbed to what? Undisturbed, regardless of the modes of material nature. Right? So in order for one to remain so steady, even when you're seeing everything around us, things are blowing up in so many different ways, whether it is the weather, whether it is the news, whether it's your boss, all the things that we spoke about. It becomes very important for us to become even more steady. And for us to be in that steady state, to maintain ourselves in that, for us to prepare ourselves and to be in that steady state, we have to be spiritually absorbed. Srila Prabhupada calls it spiritual saturation in one of the purports of Bhagavad Gita. And that is basically, for students of science, we know, right? As we keep saturating ourselves with more and more liquid or otherwise, the salt becomes completely saturated, right? Same situation. We have to completely engulf ourselves, absorb ourselves, starting with the early morning chanting and everything else that happens. So therefore, that regulation is so very important. For us to engage in that regulation and stick to it. Initially, it could be mechanical, but sooner or later, that mechanical will give way to taste. Once you have that taste, that intense taste is what we need. We're somewhere between here and there, right? Which is okay, which is at least we're so fortunate we're on the path. What about the 99.999 we were talking about? They're nowhere close to being on that path. That recognition itself is missing. So, going back, that spiritual absorption is very, very, very important. And that happens through constant engagement in devotional service. That's the best recipe for us. And having the mercy of the spiritual master, having this, the downward, the descending mercy of Guru and Krishna is very, very important. Right? So, so Krishna says to him, Gita, Ananya Cheta Savitam, Yomam Smarati Nityashaha, Tasyaham Sulabha Parta, Nitya Yuddhasya Yogina. So he says, just be absorbed in me all the time. And just by being absorbed in me, it becomes so easy to attain me. Tasyaham Sulabha Parta, Nitya Yuddhasya Yogina. So it becomes so easy. So therefore, it's a very straightforward recipe. It's not convoluted or anything like that. You don't have to perform Ashtanga Yoga. You don't have to, put yourself through any convoluted poses or do something that is rocket science. It is very, very simple, but at the same time very difficult because all the laws of material nature are acting on us constantly. Right? Even it says Param Param Vipadam. Every 1/20th of a second, if you let your guard down, Maya is there to get us. So we need to be seriously aware of that. Trouble is we are completely caught up in this material world, so we don't think. So that's where the training comes in. Keep practicing. So we're all in that process. That is a journey, and that's the reason why we are not going from 0 to 100 in just 1 second. Only some elevated, fortunate souls, but they're far and few, who can actually do that and happen that. So when we talk about Paramahamsas, they are in the highest order of sannyasis. That's what Srila Prabhupada was saying in his purport as well. So these are folks who have really achieved that spiritual absorption. They're super saturated in spiritual, in terms of their awareness and their remembrance of the Lord. And to them at that stage, they're not even thinking of their bodily comforts or needs. It doesn't matter at all for them. In fact, Lord Rishabdev, after he enthroned his son Bharata, he went to the forest and he was performing penances and austerities. And at one point in time, there was a huge forest fire that consumed his body and he was completely undisturbed. Of course, he was a Lord incarnate, but just, the concept, just taking that forward, that's how, Paramahamsas are. To achieve that state, they have to be in an intensely absorbed state of mind. So, like I was saying, our senses are dictated by the mind, right? So the more we engage our senses in the sense objects, the more we are asking. It's like adding fuel to the fire. And there are several not just stories, but instances where even elevated personalities in the Srimad Bhagavatam have been subject to the modes of material nature, and they've had trouble staying dhira. Right? So you hear stories like Vishwamitra and so many others that we can think of. But on the flip side, for someone who can stay here, there are stories about them as well in the Bhagavatam. One such instance that comes to mind is Lord Shiva. He went to the Himalayas, went to the mountains so that he could perform some intense meditation. Why? Because this was just right after he lost his wife in the fire. She basically gave up her life. She was the daughter of Daksha, Parvati Devi in that form. And Daksha humiliated and insulted Lord Shiva in the assembly of several sages. And Parvati in that particular lifetime was, completely taken aback and couldn't stand that. I mean, her own father insulting her husband, she didn't like it, and she just, threw herself into the fire and gave up her life. So with that, even through all of that, right, and then Shiva goes to the mountains and he's meditating intensely for years, and then it's as we would have it, Parvati Devi takes the birth of as the daughter of the Mount Himalaya, and I believe it was when she was in the teens, 16, 17, 18, somewhere around there, and she goes and she is sent because the penances and the austerity that Lord Shiva was performing was so intense that it caught the notice of even the demigods. So the demigods basically sent Parvati Devi to entice Lord Shiva into breaking his penance. So she tried every means. She tried through musical means, through audible means, through visual means, through even physical means. There's descriptions given of that as well. But Lord Shiva was completely undisturbed. And now that's here, right? For us it's almost unthinkable. It takes a lot for us to be in that state of mind. So it goes back to the investment of where we are and where we should be, how we get to that point of being spiritually absorbed. Savayana Krishna Padaravindeya. So you always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna, always keep thinking about Krishna, right? And which means we need that constant awareness. And what's the best way to get that constant awareness? It's being in the association of devotees, being able to hear, from the Bhagavatam, read from the Bhagavatam, chanting, right? So all the things that we're practicing and we're trying to get there. But the thing is, we need to start being aware. One of the things is we get into complacency. When we're doing something repeatedly, it becomes it's like brushing your teeth. You don't think, right? When you're brushing your teeth, do you think, I'm brushing my teeth? You don't. You're combing your hair, not really thinking about, you're combing your hair. Some of us don't have to comb your hair, there's no hair left. Same thing happens when we're chanting, we tend to take it for granted. And it becomes kind of routine for us. So when the moment we throw ourselves into that routine, we become complacent. That complacency should be taken away. We should be very, very cognitive, and we should caution ourselves against becoming complacent. And therefore, we need the mercy, again, of the devotees and of the pure devotees of this Guru and Krishna for that to happen as well. It's very easy, like I said, being in this material world, it doesn't take much for us to lose our minds. That monkey mind is always working, looking for some of the peanut here and a peanut there, a banana here, a banana there, a tree here, a tree there. We're constantly jumping like that, right? So unfortunately, we are like those candle wicks, and we're in this room, which is basically this world, this material world, which is nothing but it's the darkness of ignorance. Slight breeze, just a slight breeze, a gentle breeze is all it takes, and with that candle wick is flickering this way and that way, and it goes out, and someone has to come back and light it up again. So you're constantly going through this cycle again and again and again. It's so frustrating sometimes. Can we ever get through this? Until, we get the mercy of Guru. The spiritual master comes and he's putting us in this broad daylight where you don't have to worry about having a candle, right? Do you hold a candle or a flashlight when there is light outside? It doesn't make any difference, right? You can have 100 million candles, it doesn't make any difference. You're standing in broad daylight. You don't need any of that because everything, now you can see so much more. Whereas with the candle or if you have a flashlight, even, how much can you see? You can only see what is being illuminated. Same thing happens with our constrained minds. Our minds can only think so much. We're not able to, and we don't want to. Sometimes even that intent is also not there. Like I said, we get so complacent or we get too tired in this life. Everybody is beating us up and the whole world is beating us up. So we don't want to do anything, we just want to leave me alone, just leave me alone, let me just do my thing. So we get into that kind of a mode, and that takes us into complacency. So being in this broad daylight is basically giving us that awareness, that education, that knowledge and the wisdom that there is much more than this thing that we're seeing through our material senses. And that's what we're getting through Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's what we're getting through the pure devotee. They're able to just, take those material words and translate them, transform them into something that is so much more spiritual, that it connects with our entire being, both outside physically as well as spiritually. When that connection is made and we make that attempt to connect, then all of a sudden we're standing in that broad daylight. Then all of a sudden everything becomes very clear, it's perfectly clear that this is what it's all about. When we talk about happiness, Prabhupada talks about material happiness versus spiritual happiness. We all know material happiness is very temporary. Yet you see millions and millions, not millions, billions of people heading in that direction. Right? Even through our short lifetimes that we've been through, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, what are we seeing? There's no difference. Nothing's really changed. When I look back to when I was a kid and when I am today, nothing. And I'm in this, I'm doing all this technology work at work. But it's not really helping. Where is it taking us? It's only creating more problems. The moment you open the computer or you hook up this mic, there are only problems. The audio is not working or something is not working. The computer has its own mic. Right? So material happiness is very temporary. It's an illusion. And the reason why, there must be some reason why billions of people are still running towards it. Why? Because it's an illusion. It's like, showing something when it is not there. So people are running towards it, they're seeing something. Or they think they're seeing something. But there's really nothing there. It's like a mirage that is constantly, always referred to, as an analogy here. Whereas spiritual happiness on the other side is real happiness. It's eternal, it's permanent. But we have to get a taste for that. It's a catch-22 kind of a situation, right? We start looking for this happiness and all we see are material sense objects there, and, from TVs to whatever, right? Smartphones and so on. But that's not really taking us in the direction of happiness. But when we start hearing something on the spiritual side, our first reaction is to step aside and step away. Because we're not attracted initially, so that's the catch-22. But the truth of the matter is, the more you get engaged, the more you start to like it. There were days, I remember when Guru Maharaj, when he initially started, we were just a few of us, and Setu Maharaji can attest to it, we were just 4, 5, 6 of us here in Naperville. When we started, we had Bhakti Rickshaws. It was so nice in the sense that on Friday evenings we would meet and it was a get-together where we got to know each other and our children became very close, and it would be such a nice Friday evening get-together more than anything else. But to get to that point also, we would find excuses not to come. Bhakti Rickshaw on Friday evening, are you kidding me? So we would all find excuses, I would find excuses not to go. But then things started happening. Maharaj would come all the way from Kishore. Prabhu would do the driving and then he would come and sit with the children. They would go down to the basement in Preeti Maharaji's place and Ashok Prabhu's place and spend time with the children. So the children were taken care of and we were taken care of. Maharaj would come there, Gopal Maharaj would come there. And he would, sit on the couch and he would, and Trivakram Prabhu, who is not with us anymore, but he was our facilitator. He would come straight from work. A few minutes later, he would be completely transformed. He would be so effulgent with his tilak and fresh clothes and whites and everything, dhoti and everything. And opens, Bhagavad Gita, and then he would get started, and it would be so nice. We would just sit there and we would listen, we would say things which would be absolutely stupid. Maharaj would be sitting back, smiling, he would be, it was so tolerant. I mean, and it was like, with us all the time, every week. That was the kind of setting that we grew up. So, what was reluctance to be there on Friday evenings became, hey, we have to be there on Friday evenings. So, see, getting in touch, that's why they say being in touch with the pure devotee, even for a moment, is transformative. And that's not just in sentiment, it's you actually experience that happening. And then that led to more things, and see what we have today is something so beautiful. It grew from very humble beginnings. Premanandaji moved here, then other devotees moved from Palatine, and then we started growing, and then we had to find a place. We found Oswego, and Oswego also we outgrew Oswego in no time, like a few years. And then this opened up here in Naperville. Maharaj said, I want to make sure that you have an offer put in place before the end of the day today. So we met around 10:30 in Oswego, and this came up. He said, I want to make sure that you guys do that. Then we quickly, a few of us put our heads together, came up with the offer, and we made the offer. Fortunately for us, we were able to make, the offer was accepted. There were 3 others behind us the same day who offered more. Can you imagine? I mean, this is like a jewel in Naperville. Proximity to the highway, being right here. There's no other temple in anywhere close to this vicinity, right? You have to go at least 15 minutes west or southeast for another 30 minutes. So this doesn't happen by chance. It's by the will of the pure devotee, and as the collective will and that endeavor happens between the devotees, it's beautiful. And Maharaj would always say, make sure that I would go with, Stoka Krishna Prabhu and I were given the initial agenda to find a place, even before we found this, to find a good location for our temple. So we were looking all over the place, everywhere. We would go to all the cities, the villages, the counties, and we would find that Naperville especially is landlocked. Okay, I'm digressing a little bit, but I'm just trying to get to the point as to why it is important to get that mercy, that descending mercy has to come, and that willingness to endeavor should be there. Both have to happen. So we went all over the place just to find out that Naperville is completely landlocked. They said we don't. But we would look at the big map with them and say, hey, but what about this open space? This open space, can we build a temple there? There would be a big question mark on their faces. And then later we would find out they would rather have some sports pavilion built there or some club built there. Religious institutions generally, they think, oh, it's going to be like a church or something, and then, it becomes like a brat place, no one attends, it becomes lack of maintenance, it just falls apart. Same thing happened. So finally when we found this place, it was a church. I believe it was a Southern Methodist church or so. The attendance had fallen, the membership had fallen so much to a point that they decided to go back down south. So this place came out. And then when we first started the church, you should have seen this place. You still see some remnants here. You see those benches? Yeah. For the longest time we had, so we took all those benches out. We had, a completely different arrangement there at the altar. And then we had to move those benches up. We were literally trying to, first we tried selling it, didn't work. So we tried giving it away. People would take it for free. Finally we had to push and say, please take it, please take it. And you'll find some of those even now in Kishori. So finally, they were sitting up there, some got drenched, some got destroyed. Anyway, finally, and then we made this. This place is so beautiful because of all the Vaishnavas, the devotees that have been putting their heart and soul, and year after year, it's only getting better. It's only getting better. So that's what it takes, and that's the catch-22. When you get that taste, it sticks. And when it sticks, there's no stopping. So it's an upward spiral. The more you experience it, the more you enjoy it. The more you enjoy it, the more you want to experience it. And so it keeps taking you up and up and up. So that is on the spiritual side. On the material side, you keep endeavoring and you keep looking for that happiness, which may be happiness but very, very momentary. When you first go to the Apple store, everything looks so good. Man, this is so cool. Then you finally get to a point where you decide this is what I want to get. I'm going to get this fancy, this iPhone, whatever. And then it comes in a package. It looks so attractive, right? Shiny, very clean, and everything, unlike anything else that you would see, not even in the Microsoft store, Apple store. And then you open it, everything looks so well designed and smooth, and everything looks like polished, and you're getting that feeling of happiness. Oh wow, I feel so good, I bought myself a new phone. Then you start loading music and this and that, and you're just feeling good about it. But that only lasts so long. Before you know it, you drop it somewhere, and the big fat crack across the screen, and you say, oh my God, what happened? And then after a while it falls a few times, it cracks a few times. Now how many times will you take it and get it fixed? First time you'll get it fixed, because it's still looking new. After it gets a few dings, now you'll say, anyway, there are a few dings there. What's the big deal in trying to fix the screen? Let it be broken. I don't care. Right? Now all of a sudden it's gone. Now you're looking at something else. Now you're looking for the next iPhone. Now September is coming, the new iPhone is going to come. So now everybody's looking. Is there a leak? Is Google, are we seeing anything on the internet where, at least we get a glimpse of the new iPhone? So that's the monkey mind. It's constantly jumping from one tree to another, from one iPhone to another iPhone, from one gadget to another gadget. That's the problem that we have. And that's why it is such an illusion. That's what Prabhupada says, and all our acharyas say, that it is an illusion that we're investing in. Don't invest in this illusion. Invest in something that is eternal, something that is permanent, something that will give you that real happiness. We don't know what that real happiness is. That's a big problem. And that's the reason why we need to be engaged in devotional service. Because the taste that we get, the experience that we get from devotional service, it could be as simple as just sweeping the floor of the temple hall. That intrinsic joy, that satisfaction that you get, will you get the same thing if your wife tells you to do it at home? If your boss tells you to run up and down to do some clerical work, will you do it? Right? Suddenly your ego comes up. Why should I do it? Tell somebody else to do it. What is your daughter doing there? She's not doing anything. Why don't you tell her to do something? Right? And then you sit down and you do your thing. But the same thing you do here in the temple, or you do it in the association of devotees, now all of a sudden you feel that satisfaction. No one has to tell you that, no one has to make you feel that, it's just intrinsic, you just feel that. So it doesn't have to be something elaborate, and phenomenal that you have to try and do in terms of devotional service. Simple. Krishna says, right, whatever you offer, could be a flower, could be a fruit, even water. So anything that you're doing with love for Krishna automatically becomes, the moment he accepts it, there is reciprocation. And that reciprocation is something that you feel. Because the moment he accepts it, you feel that happiness. You cook something for Krishna, you could be the worst cook in the world. But notice, when you offer it and it comes back as prasadam, now all of a sudden you feel, man, did I really make that? I caught myself saying that several times. So that is the kind of engagement that we need to have. And we need to start building, we need to not start, continue to build that relationship. The relationship is already there. It's just that we need to awaken that. I was listening to the lecture yesterday where I think it was Harishan Prabhu and Kishore, he was giving a Vallabha class. He was talking about Lord Balaram on the eve of Balaram Jayanti. So what are two things that Lord Balaram carries with him? Very distinct. Love. And?
The thing, I don't know the name.
Which thing?
That
Staff?
for, yeah.
Okay, okay, good. And? But two distinct things. There are other things too which I will tell you. It was quite amazing. I heard it for the first time. Plow is more prominent, right? So, by his waist, where he ties up, he has a buffalo horn. Yeah, he has a buffalo horn. So, the significance of that is that, the buffalo horn, basically, he would blow that to awaken the Brajavasis early in the morning. And that symbolizes the awakening of our hearts, the spirit of devotion in our hearts. And the plow, that is pretty straightforward, you can understand. The plow is used to till the land to make it ready so that it can be planted and ready for plants to grow, crops to grow. Similarly, it's the plow we use in our hearts because our hearts are so hard, right? To make it soft, to make it pliable, the plow is used. And therefore, Lord Balaram is that original spiritual master who provides all that. He is the motivating force. In fact, it's because of him the planets are also, this whole concept and notion of gravity comes from him. He is the source for that. Not just at a planetary level, but also when you look at it at the atomic and subatomic level. We've read about Kepler's laws and things like that. Right? What is it? It's nothing but how the atoms and the electrons, the protons, all of those are there and held by the nucleus. Now there is some force there, right? That force, starting from the atom all the way into the universe, is Lord Balaram's manifestation. So it's absolutely amazing. So the other things that also were shared were, apparently Lord Balaram also has a flute. He carries the flute. But he never uses it. Krishna is the one who uses it. So, amazing. So, I don't know why I brought that up, but so my personal realization, again, I know I'm there just a few minutes beyond, but in terms of time, but my personal realization is this. We are subject to all the worst things in the material world. Right? The modes of material nature are acting on us constantly. That is something So why dwell on it? It is so difficult to try and extricate ourselves from that. We are part of that, unfortunately. Like it's like throwing ourselves into oil or something like that, grease. The more you try to get rid of it, the more it sticks to you. And for some of you who have kids and they watch, Pooh Bear and stuff like that, Pooh Bear would invariably get stuck in some honey pot. And the more he would try to extricate, get himself out of the pot or the honey, the more it would stick. So, material world is like that. It's so gooey and it is sticky and it is dirty and filthy. But we're stuck in that. So why dwell so much in that? My realization is, why don't we take up something that is easy for us to do? And what is that? It's devotional service. Because if you can take up something that is easier for us to do, in this case something good, okay. There are other easy things too, but we don't want to indulge in that. Instead, I wanted to mention it. But engaging in devotional service is so much easier for us. Taking a pair of kartals and doing some kirtan. For some of us it is very, very easy. Right? Or performing deity services. Some people are expert at that. So whatever resonates with you, whatever is easy for you, take that up and do it with love, with affection, with commitment. The moment you do that, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And believe me, like I said, Krishna is reciprocating. That reciprocation is there almost instantaneously. So the more you do it, the stronger it gets. And the stronger it gets, your bhakti is getting stronger, right? Automatically, your other things are going to fall by the wayside. You don't even have to think about it. Prabhupada Maharaj always would tell us, don't dwell on the negativity. Instead, think about how you can focus on the positive things. Automatically, the negative things will fall aside. So once you get the higher taste, the lower age automatically will fall by the wayside. So I'd like to leave you with that thought and I'd like to open it up for any discussion. And if there are any questions, we have experts sitting here.
I believe it was very nice, Prabhu. We could go back in memory through all those years. Then Priti Mataji's house, and then Premata Mataji's basement, and then mostly go and yourself giving class in that Ostico studio up there. And I went through all this, it was nice recollecting. And then about coming here, I want to share with this small group. I was running to Ostico, it is about 30 minutes. So that day, I was getting like, it was 10 o'clock our time there, and I was running late and I was thinking to myself, oh Krishna, now when the temple comes, it will be out in the, somewhere in the suburb, and I won't even be able to drive there with the, I will drive on the highway. So I felt, Krishna, they are gone. And then the temple came, it was 5 minutes within my house. I mean, think about my thrill, I want to share today that one.
And I must say also that you are making the best use of it. You always see sitting there doing reading of Bhagavatam.
No, really, the best I should have done much better, I know, but I was limitless, my happiness when this temple was just 5 minutes, and then Mom Leela Prabhu will teach me, you are Krishna's closest neighbor. Then I have a question regarding our class, Prabhu. This has been going on in my mind for a while. That is, when Krishna appears in the prison house and talks to Mother Devaki and Vasudeva, he says, I feel your son. This is the third time I am taking birth. Before Sudapa and Prishnigartha's, Prishni's son, Prishnigartha, and then as Vamanadeva, Kashyapa and Aditi's son, then now as Krishna. So then I am wondering who his parents are. As Sriram, we know Dasharatha and Kausalya, and then as Parshuram, we know Jamadakti and Revika. So, and then you said Nabi and King Nabi and Mary Devi, they are also, why the Lord focus on those 3 incarnations only, as his parents being the same, Vasudeva and Devaki. That was my doubt. Prabhuji, any comments on that one? Yourself, any comments on that one?
Please. No.
I'm not here to comment, I'm here to look.
To the best of my knowledge, there are others as well, but we would prominently feature all those 3.
Yeah,
But I can certainly, do some research and get back to you.
so this
Something that I'm
thing
not
was
aware
the
of.
meaning, why Lord took on those?
Yeah. And again, the understanding also, Bhagavatam is not going according to the chronology that as we know it, in terms of time as we know it.
That is true, but Krishna, he of course he knows his past as Sriram, as Parshuram, and so why would those parentage not be in the same category? I'm thinking. He's talking about Prishnigartha, which is not so discussed in Bhagavatam, if I recall, The Vamanadeva,
Right. Even Devabhuti,
yeah.
for that matter.
Yeah,
Right.
I was thinking about that.
Kapil Dev, yes. Good question, Mama.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.